Hey Neil, Nevada now has the perhaps dubious distinction of being the site of the first lawsuit filed by a campaign in this election. In a court hearing today here in Las Vegas, the Trump campaign alleged anomalies in early voting, which ended here in Nevada on Friday. Specifically, they say that voters were allowed to join the lines and therefore vote after the scheduled closing time of certain polling places. Now, a Clark County being where Las Vegas is, Clark County lawyer pointed out to the judge that may be the law on election day, that you have to be in line by the scheduled closing of a polling place. It is not the law for early election. The Trump lawyers then said they wanted the court to rule that the Clark County officials had to preserve all voting evidence from these polling places. The judge, somewhat incredulous, said that is in fact already the law. I'm not going to obligate them to do something they already have a public obligation to do, and the Trump lawsuit was therefore denied. As for the state of the race here, Neil, it has been tight throughout. Hillary Clinton appears to have an edge from early voting. Donald Trump will hope to reverse that with a large turnout in more conservative northern Nevada today. Neil?
Thank you, my friend. All right, in the meantime, looking to another battleground state, and this is Ohio, where, of course, we've been getting reports all day of very heavy voter turnout. Who that benefits or exactly where that turnout is showing up, anyone's guess. But Peter Ducey in Cleveland right now, keeping track of all of that. Hey, Peter.
And Neil, we're wondering where the heavy turnout is showing up as well, because here in Cuyahoga County, there have not been any problems with really long lines yet today. Officials had been warning through the weekend and then into yesterday afternoon that voters needed to give themselves about an hour to go to a polling place, find a parking spot, then go and cast their ballots and head on out. But we spent a good chunk of our morning and early afternoon driving around to a handful of random polling places in suburbs and in the city, and we didn't see big crowds anywhere. In fact, it's taking people here at this recreational center in Cleveland just a few minutes to get in and out. One complicating factor could be the weather. It has been steadily raining for the last 2.5 hours or so. It's going to keep raining until polls close. That said, the Secretary of State is calling the turnout statewide steady, but he does not think there's going to be a record set here in the Buckeye State. Neil?
All right, thank you. That's a must-win, certainly, right now for Donald Trump. All right, now Fox Business Network, Conal McShane crunching all the data in all the key states, especially the rollout throughout the evening. Conal, what do you have?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Neil. We're just about at the time when we can go to our maps here and we'll start to populate what we're looking at with some real data. And as you said a moment ago, under 3 hours from now is when we'll start to get some of the key closing states. We'll look at Virginia and we'll look at Georgia in the 7 o'clock Eastern time hour. But I think the time to circle on your watch, so to speak, is 7:30 Eastern. Peter was out at Ohio, but also the key state this time around of North Carolina, which we can talk about in some more detail in just a moment. By the top of the 8 o'clock evening Eastern hour, when we're covering it on the Fox Business Network later, Neil, we'll have Florida, we'll have Pennsylvania, and then we'll really start to get into it, move out west at 9 o'clock in the east. We'll be looking at Arizona and Colorado and key states like that. Now, let's get into this just a little bit, and we'll go back to 2012, the Barack Obama-Mitt Romney map, and every conversation that we'll be having this evening with regards to does Donald Trump have a path to 270 electoral votes will have to start and end in the state of Florida. Remember, we divide Florida up into thirds, with the Democratic support here in the southern part of the state in places like Miami-Dade and Broward County, with the Republican support up here along the border with Alabama and Georgia. But look at the I-4 corridor and see how that one turns out. That's how you know how the state of Florida will turn out. Now, I mentioned North Carolina a moment ago. That really is going to be so important when it comes in later. Mitt Romney won it 4 years ago. Remember, Barack Obama had it 8 years ago, the first time he ran. The place to watch, or one of the places to watch in North Carolina, is going to be Mecklenburg County, right in the Charlotte area. Look how much the president took this county by in 2012 over Mitt Romney, 61-38. So the question for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side, can she turn out particularly African-American voters in inner cities, whether it's Charlotte and other places, and make sure that she's able to run up this score to a similar fashion? We'll watch it very closely this evening in North Carolina. Now, finally, as I go back to you, Neil, we could pick a state up here because all the narrative of the story has been is, can Donald Trump take a traditional blue state, whether it be Michigan or maybe Pennsylvania, where I just came back from doing some reporting in, and flip it over to his side? One of the keys in Pennsylvania is, how does he do in the Philadelphia suburbs. There are 4 counties surrounding the city of Philadelphia. Only one of them, Chester County, went red the last time around. Let's look to see how Trump does there tonight. So we're getting there, Neil. Almost time to have real results.
Yeah, let's get ready to rumble. All right, thank you very much, Connell. Again, the first wave of states, we've got 6 of them that close at 7 p.m. You're looking at the scene right now in Youngstown, Ohio. But a lot of tension there. That state is getting a great deal of scrutiny, to put it mildly. Those closing at 7:30 p.m. there, a must-win state, as we said, for Donald Trump. If you buy the conventional wisdom that no Republican can make it to the White House without first winning there, let's get to read of things and how it kind of rolls out tonight with GOP pollster Lee Carter and the Hill's Bob Cusack. All right, so Lee, looking at what has to go Donald Trump's way, what has to go Hillary Clinton's way, those early waves of states, what do you look for? That would include Georgia and Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, Vermont. What are the kind of things you're going to be focused on?
So the things that I really want to look at as the exit polls begin coming out over the next hour or so is voter turnout. What are the numbers of people that are voting and who are they? I want to know the demographics. I want to understand, is it the white vote? Is it the Hispanic vote? Is it the black vote? Is it women? That's going to tell us a lot about who's going to win, because I do believe that our polling model is going to prove to be broken to a certain extent this election cycle, because we've only been focused on likely voters. That doesn't mean people have voted before, and we're already seeing in states like Florida, we have a record number of Hispanics. We have 20% increase in voter in the white vote coming out. So it's going to come down to a lot of new voters this election cycle, and I think that's going to prove to be a very challenging thing for us to know what's going to happen. So looking at those exit polls, trying to figure out who it is that's voted, I think we can start making some extrapolations from there, but it's really anybody's guess, and everything is so close. The last polls that we had yesterday in these swing states were so tight, there's really no way of knowing what's going to happen until we start seeing some of these numbers coming out.
Yeah, they were all virtually in the margin of error, so only a couple. But Bob, let me ask you a little bit about the early surge in Hispanic voting we're hearing, and that was thought to be an instant, especially in states like Florida, beneficiary to Hillary Clinton, but of course it leaves out the fact that many of those Hispanic voters are Cuban Americans. I guess it depends on the generation, but it's not a lock that they're all Hillary Clinton voters. Or what's your read?
Yeah, no, that's right. And Mitt Romney struggled with Hispanic voters in 2012. Certainly, Hillary Clinton is going to win the Hispanic vote, but it's just a matter of margins. But there's no doubt about it. I think the key thing is the African-American turnout. Can they get it to 85-90% of what happened in 2012? And certainly, I think one early state to look at is Virginia. In 2012, when they didn't call North Carolina early for Mitt Romney, you knew that he was going to have a tough night. If they don't call Virginia relatively early for Hillary Clinton, it could be a very good night for Trump and a bad night for Hillary Clinton. She should win Virginia.
So, Lee, one of the interesting developments, and you said at the outset about whose people are showing up or what groups are showing up. We've heard already that for Hillary Clinton, the problem, not surprisingly, it's not exclusively her fault, is the passion that you had on the part of African-American voters is simply not there as it was 4 years ago, and certainly 4 years prior to that with Barack Obama. She has supposedly made up for that, again, if you buy the consensus argument that most of those Hispanic votes might be going her way with that. But is that enough? I mean, what else do you look for that would be an uh-oh for her?
That alone is not enough. I think we also have to see the single women come out and vote. The single women are more than 75% are likely to vote for Hillary Clinton. And so if we see a lot of the single women coming out and voting, you know that she's having a very, very good night. A lot of this is coming down to enthusiasm. And we've been talking about the enthusiasm that exists between Donald Trump supporters and Hillary Clinton supporters. And that's a big, it's a big thing. Over the last week, we have seen Trump's enthusiasm has gone up, her enthusiasm has gone down. I don't know. We've been wondering what is the result of Comey coming back and saying there's nothing new to see here. Is that going to make her base more enthusiastic? Is that going to make people who questioned her more likely to come out and vote for her? There's so many variables right now, but I would be looking right now to see the numbers of single women coming out to vote.
Bob, real quickly as well on Florida, you don't mind my going back to that. It's such a crucial state. Everyone says that if you're Donald Trump, you have to win it. Hillary Clinton doesn't have to win it. That's a consensus. But if it turns out he loses that one, and keep in mind, it took us a couple of days 4 years ago to find out who really did win Florida. I think it was separated by less than a percentage point. But then what does Donald Trump have to do? If Florida isn't going his way, how does he string together enough states to make up for it?
Neil, it's a tough road at that point. If he loses Pennsylvania and Florida, then you've got to look at Michigan. Remember, President Obama and Hillary Clinton were in Michigan yesterday, and if you told me a year ago that the day before the election that they were both going to be in Michigan, I'd be like, wow, that's astounding, and maybe she's in trouble. So I think he'd have to tear down that blue wall. Wisconsin, Michigan, win Iowa, win Ohio. Is it still possible? Yes, but I think he's got to win Florida, Neil.
All right, we'll watch closely. Guys, I want to thank you both very, very much. In the meantime, this falls under the not so amazing Fox News alert. Goldman and Citi, Barclays, they're all apparently issuing a warning that whatever we decide tonight as a nation, there's going to be a lot of volatility in the markets and in general. All right. Home Depot co-founder Ken Langone on that next. All right, I want to show you something. This is New York City. These are voters who are wrapping lines around blocks here. A very, very heavy turnout we're hearing in New York. Depending on the voting precinct and the locality, of course, you're hearing stories that are pretty similar. Of course, when we finally crunch the numbers, we'll get a real idea. This is just sort of like a visual, anecdotal case that, at least in New York, there's a great deal of pent-up interest in this race. New York, of course, on a national level is Hillary Clinton's state to lose, rich in electoral votes, and for as long as I know, it's been, I think, dating back to maybe once with Ronald Reagan, an instant Democratic win. But again, that shows you a lot of people there. They do have a lot of referenda for votes here in the city here. That's a long, long line. All right, I have Ken Langone here, the Home Depot co-founder. Apparently, I don't realize that Ken pays attention to this show. So when I was kidding his cohort in crime, Bernie Marcus, who was also a guest here, and that neither of them were very handy, well, unfortunately, Mr. Langone heard that. So I was hoping to talk behind his back and not realize that he, in fact, did hear that. Here he is now, Ken Langone, and you are not handy.
The only thing that bothered me about what you said, poor Bernie couldn't sleep last night. Didn't bother me. But,
I think he sleeps just fine.
He has Jewish insecurities.
It is amazing. Two of the most unhandy guys on the planet come up with Home Depot.
We couldn't put nails in wood.
All right, well, what do you think of this race right now, the way you see it? You're obviously for Donald Trump.
What do I think? I'm glad it's over, almost over.
Yeah.
I'm glad and I feel so bad for America. The issues and the challenges this country has ahead of it, big time. The deficit, foreign relations, Middle East, education, entitlements. These are all things that need to be addressed.
And neither Canada really did.
I don't think they know what they need to address.
Yeah.
The tragedy, I said off camera, the tragedy is the wrong people run for public office. But why would anybody in their right frame of mind want to get in that cesspool? And that's exactly what it's
That's
become.
what I was kind of saying to you. I mean, did you ever entertain
Never.
this? And why not? It's just
because my wife would have divorced me, and I love her too much, okay?
Yeah.
No, seriously.
It is a demeaning and grueling process, isn't it?
You can dramatically improve it if you have term limits.
Yeah.
If you have term limits, people know I'm going there, I'm going to do my thing, and then I'm going home. But you turn these people into political classes, into professional paths.
They're there perpetually.
Tonight, there's going to be winners and losers. The first thought all the winners are going to have tonight across America is getting reelected again the next time.
Right, their next focus. You know, you've seen some of this market reaction, what's going on. I know you don't put much stock in it here, but the stock market seems to like Hillary Clinton. And I've had our Charlie Gasparino into why. And this is, well, the argument is she's a known quantity, Trump is an unknown quantity. Do you buy that?
I don't know if she's a known quantity any more than he's an unknown quantity. Look, the big issue is we're going to have to take some pain in America. I don't care who you are or what you do. When we start to look at the deficit, when we start to look at how out of control we are in terms of interest, paying people peanuts, pension funds are going to go broke, insurance companies are going to. This is not healthy for us as a nation.
No, we keep kicking the can and we don't address this.
And we got to take some pain.
Do you think whoever gets in? I've heard this argument a lot. The chickens come home to roost. They're an automatic one-term.
That wouldn't be bad to me. Look. I view where we are right now as the equivalent of a drunk hitting bottom. Right this minute. I think America, all this anger, all this voter turnout, these are not happy voters. These are not people coming out to vote saying, hey, we love what you do and do more of it. These are people that are saying we're fed up.
Normally, if there are enough of them, Ken, they go for the challenger, in this case, Donald Trump. Do you think so?
I think the anger of the American people is so profound and so deep that they don't know why they're angry anymore. All they know is they're angry, and they know look, unemployment. Whoever the hell believes 4.9% is our unemployment rate, there's a bunch of bridges over here. I'll give them all the bridges for $1. They can buy them off. This unemployment rate's 10, 11, 12% right now.
Yeah. In other words, so many people have dropped out of the workforce. And
look at income inequality. There's another issue we have to deal with. The biggest issue of all to me is education. Public school education in America is a disgrace. It's not bad. It's pathetic. It's an absolute disgrace. We, the most developed nation on earth, and this is the best we can do?
So these long lines who share a lot of your angst, normally when there's a large protest and anger out there, it benefits the renegade candidate. Now, that supposedly is Donald Trump, but it's not reflected.
But
in all
it may
the
not
polls.
be this time.
It may not be this time. All right,
look, it's like a great wine. Maybe it ripens in 5 years or 9 years or 13. The fact is, the American people are getting closer and closer to the reality that their leaders have failed them badly.
Who of these two is better equipped to deal with this? All the stuff you outlined.
I think probably Trump. And I'll tell you why. You can say a lot of bad things about Trump. Look at every building he built.
Oh, he's a business genius.
Gets them done. They're beautiful. Look at Woolman Rink. The city screwed around for 4 years. He takes it in 6. There's a lot of things I wish were different about Donald Trump. But if you want to look at accomplishments, you know, people talk about his problem with subcontractors. Seems to me that he has no trouble getting subcontractors every time he does a project.
But business guys have a tough time in a political world, don't they?
Yeah, because they want to get things done.
Right.
Look at the nonsense of the Congress of the United States the last 16 years. Obama takes office 8 years ago today, maybe today, right around. Public education has gotten dramatically worse in 8 years. If he wants to do anything to help the disadvantaged people in America, the most he can do, give them a good education.
Give them a good education. So good seeing you, my
nice
friend. You've done very well for yourself without being handy.
Bernie, if you're out there, he lied yesterday, Bernie, okay?
You both couldn't know which end of a hammer to hold up.
Good to see you.
But that's fine. That's fine. I'm not the only one.
Good seeing you.
All right. Good seeing you. Ken
Thanks for having
Langone.
me.
Calls it like he sees it. More. He's already leaving. He's so annoyed. I can't blame him. We'll have more. All right, we're getting news out of Durham County, North Carolina. This is in the Raleigh area. The North Carolina State Board of Elections office has directed Durham County to use paper poll books throughout the day after technical problems with electronic poll books were encountered in some of the precincts. The issue arose earlier on when they were checking in voters when they would come in to vote. It had nothing to do with the ballots, so their argument that there was some sort of a ballot rigging was not the issue, just that they prefer everyone post paper ballots. And they are not, it looks like, going to interrupt or extend voting as a result. So the regular closing hours will be the same. I believe that state closed at 7:30 p.m. Am I right on that? Yes, 7:30 p.m. So they think with this accommodation, there's no reason to extend voting in that state. Another very closely watched battleground state. All right. By the way, not just for president there in that state, for example, there's a governorship and a Senate seat, but also these Senate seats and the battle for the U.S. Senate is very, very much being scrutinized here, because if Hillary Clinton were to win tonight, all she needs are 4 more Democrats to win tonight in their Senate battles, and she has got the United States Senate under her control in that event. Molly Line in Concord, New Hampshire, with the latest on probably the more focused battle for the New Hampshire Senate race. Molly.
Absolutely, Neil. There's been strong turnout here in the Granite State, as there generally is. Very savvy voters here in the state. They have some hotly contested races before them. But if you want to talk about the Senate race, you're absolutely right, Neil. This could have a big impact on what happens in the U.S. Senate. It's the incumbent Republican Senator, Kelly Ayotte, that's facing a very tough challenge from the Democratic governor of the state, Maggie Hassan. Both of these women have strong name recognition. They have long resumes, and they have powerful get-out-the-vote machines behind them. They've been crisscrossing the state, doing the retail politics that it takes to win here in New Hampshire. We had a chance to check in with both of these candidates in recent days. On Ayotte's camp, she's been out there going to diners, doing bagging groceries. Her campaign says it's been one of her favorite things to do along the lines out there and chatting with the voters. We also had a chance to catch up with the governor and get a look at her canvassing machine. She had a kickoff, and it was completely full room that she sent out there to get out and knock on doors. So both of these women have powerful machines behind them, and they have been out there working hard, even today.
All right, sorry we lost Molly's feed here. Frank Luntz, a GOP pollster extraordinaire, keeps track of the mood of the American electorate better than a lot of folks I know here. He's in the middle of Times Square, so he's not looking for freebies, and he's not like one of those you walk up to and take a picture with him like some of these characters. He's a character, but a brilliant one. What's your read on this night, and what are the states that Frank Luntz is looking at very closely?
So my read is that the turnout is significant. And Neil, it was the one thing that I could not predict until the last 2 or 3 days. I wasn't sure if the negativity and the voters' real disdain for both candidates would yield a high turnout or low turnout. It's pretty clear that people are coming out to vote all across the country, at least in these battleground states. And I've got it down to 5 states. Florida, which at this point leans narrowly to Hillary Clinton, and I'm watching the exit polling right now, and it's pretty significant in Latino communities. I don't mean the exit polling, the early voting, that the Latino vote in Florida and Nevada is not only significant, but it is historic, and it is leaning strongly towards Hillary Clinton. Second state is North Carolina, as you mentioned. Much too early to call, much too tight a race. I think the winner ends up with maybe a % difference. New Hampshire, that you also were addressing, once again, it was a state that Hillary Clinton had a lead up until 3 or 4 days ago. Trump was moving and closing and closing. At this point, it leads narrowly towards the Democrats, but way too close to call. I'm also watching Nevada, that I just talked about, and finally Michigan. If there's one state that will be a surprise for Donald Trump, I think it's Michigan, because of the turnout that we see so far in the blue-collar areas and the fact that the Trump campaign had its best organization in that state. Who knows? It could make a difference.
But if you're right, gaining Michigan wouldn't make up for potentially losing Florida.
You're correct, and if you do the math, I still see this as a narrow victory for Hillary Clinton. I don't see any other way to do the math, but I also say to viewers, because we have to be careful, no projections. There are 5 states that are still in play, and either candidate could still win tonight.
You know, Frank, much has been said of the fact the undercurrents could be very 1980-like, and that we didn't appreciate the magnitude of that undercurrent wave of support for Ronald Reagan until we did. Do you see anything like that manifesting itself or potentially tonight?
Well, I've been looking for that so-called shy Trump voter, the person who won't acknowledge it but actually supports him. And frankly, I haven't found a significant example of it. But by the same token, those people who are not willing to acknowledge they are voting for Trump may well balance out Clinton's advantage in some of these states in turnout. Now, the Republicans have a very strong effort in a place like Michigan, where they've won statewide, not for the presidency, but for the governor and for the legislature. Neil, we are ending this campaign with more people disliking both candidates than at any time in modern history, more people wanting this election to be over with, a sense of frustration that they never really got to the policies. It was all about character assassination, but that has not stopped turnout. And all my sources are telling me that people are lining up for an hour or more all across these swing states, and that makes this a competitive race.
All right, thank you very, very much. Frank Luntz in Times Square. Well, they say history really isn't about repeating itself. The historian Doris Kearns Goodwin might disagree. And we're always told that these guys can never, that is Republicans and Democrats,
let an election go and get their grievances behind them. The Republican congressman who strongly disagrees. All right, the scene right now for control of Washington, for control of a third of the United States Senate up for grabs, all of the House up for grabs, of course, the White House itself up for grabs. Missouri Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. Congressman, very good to have you. I'm sorry I misidentified you as a Republican. Of course, I knew better. And I haven't even gotten into my multi-hour coverage yet, Congressman, so imagine what I'm capable of screwing up. It's very good to have you, sir. How do you think it's shaping up? All right, we just
the House of Representatives.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think the House of Representatives is probably going to remain in the hands of Republicans, although the Democrats are going to pick up some seats, maybe 10 seats. And I think the Senate is too close to call. It could go either way, and it's going to depend on turnout. Yeah. But I think in some of the Senate race in Missouri is a neck and neck between Roy Blunt and Jason Kander. I don't think there's anybody who could say they know exactly how that's going to turn out. And it's that way, I think, in Wisconsin, as well as New Hampshire and probably Arizona. We thought it was going to be a closer race, but it's not as close as we thought. Looks like John McCain should win that seat again.
Yeah, Democrats need only 4 seats, assuming Hillary Clinton were to win, and that's way too early to tell one way or the other, to your point. But do you get a sense, if the House stays, and let's say Democrats pick up only 10 seats, I mean, that's going to be a pretty split read of the Hill. How do you think that would work out?
Well, 2 things. One, many of the Republicans in the Senate, the senior Republicans, have worked with Hillary Clinton before, and many of them say that they had a very good working relationship with her. I think she's going to extend her hand to Republicans a lot sooner than maybe we've seen in the past, and I think she will also spend an enormous amount of time early on trying to get Republicans to buy into some of the proposals she would like to bring forth, and by the same token, listening to what they want.
Well,
I think
tax hikes with a Republican House seem to be a non-starter, but what do you think?
I don't think it's going to go far because of the Norquist pledge. That's one of the reasons I don't think we're going to be able to get tax reform. Republicans and Democrats alike understand that we do need to reform our tax codes, and Donald Trump himself has said that needs to be dealt with. But because the Norquist pledge, where many of the Republicans have signed a pledge that under no circumstance would they vote to increase taxes, and if you have a tax reform package, that means that some people's taxes, some corporations' taxes will go up while others would go down. And so the Norquist people say, even if there's a change in the tax code,
don't budge.
That's a tax increase.
All right, Emanuel Cleaver, thank you very much. Democratic Congressman, Missouri, a minister also by training here, so he's good at keeping the peace on both sides. A quality that might come in handy, depending on how things go tonight. I guess either way they go tonight. Doris Kearns Goodwin is here. She's broken through a lot of similarities in this election. Just to think that we've never had anything like this ever before. Au contraire. After this. All right, this is the scene right now in Chappaquiddick, New York. This is Hillary Clinton's home base here. She is preparing to leave for, I believe, the New York's Peninsula Hotel before heading on to the Jacob Javits Center to give what she hopes, I'm sure, is a victory speech, although we're told that she, like Donald Trump, have a victory and a concession speech ready at the go. I don't know if Doris Kearns Goodwin has ever written such speeches, but she has heard them from both sides, the noted presidential historian, on the importance of this very big evening. Doris, very good to have you. Thanks for coming.
You're very welcome.
All right, so your sense, first of all, of what's at stake tonight. I caught your remarks. I think you were addressing a crowd recently out in California where it was bemoaning a very divisive, nasty election, not unprecedented, but right up there. How
How do you think we'll all come together, no matter who wins tonight?
Well, I think the one thing that history tells us is while we always think we're living through the worst of times, and there's lots of structural reasons why this could be difficult after this election, if one of the candidates doesn't accept it, if there's polarization that cannot be gotten through in the Congress, and yet I look more optimistically. I mean, think about some of the troubling elections we had in the past. In 1912, Teddy and Taft, when they ran against each other, Taft, the sitting president, Teddy, the actual former president who came against his old friend, there was such vitriol. He called Taft a pinhead with the brain of a guinea pig. Taft said Teddy was going to be a dictator. The New York Times said this is such an embarrassing campaign that we must all have a blush on our cheeks as to what foreigners are thinking about us.
That was before cable news.
Exactly. In fact, that was the first primary system, so that's where it all began.
Right.
And maybe that's the fruit of which we're getting now.
That primary system created the very thing that party bosses didn't like, that they lost hold of and control of. That's been the rap, depending on your views of Donald Trump, but where we are now. What do you think happens if Donald Trump were to lose tonight? Way too early, we don't know. What happens then? Do parties reassess?
I think the party may have to think about having more sense of, if not control, more influence over who the nominee is. I mean, parties are supposed to exist mainly for nominating a candidate, and in the old days they did it in the conventions, and then we came home, and then suddenly we had 2 months only in the fall for the election. I think many of us would love to go back to that. It's hard to turn your back on democracy once it's gone forward, which a primary system recommends. But still, the Democrats had more control this year because they had more superdelegates that were there for Hillary from the beginning. The Republicans ceded that control to the primary.
But many of those Democrats are bitter and angry about that process, and it might not matter and Hillary Clinton wins, but it leaves raw nerves.
No, I understand. It's really a tension, but it's a real tension in American life is if the parties mean anything at all, you want the party leaders, if you trust them, to have some greater say in who the person is. Now, the interesting thing that happens after 1912, as bitter as that was, eventually Taft and Teddy reconciled their own personal relationship. Eventually, the Republican Party, even though it lost then to the Democrats, they then win 3 presidential elections. They've come back together, the progressive and conservative wings. So we've seen that as history. We saw Al Gore in that incredible problem that he had with Mr. Bush. It went 36 days before the election was even decided, and he comes out and gives a speech that says, I will meet Bush. I want to heal these divisions as soon as possible, reminding people that when Stephen Douglas lost to Lincoln, he said, we're all patriots now first. So history allows you to hope that when a person gets the mantle of the presidency over them, there is a sense that we're going to give legitimacy to that person.
But it really depends on the size of the victory, right, Doris? I mean, obviously that was such a nail-biter. You could make the argument that Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, if it's a real close one tonight, would be looking for any avenue, any opportunity, much as, now, he didn't formally challenge it. John Kerry looked at Ohio, or his people did, in 2004. If it's close enough or could make a difference in a crucial state, all legal options are open, right?
Well, on the other hand, though, look at President Nixon when he lost the first time in 1960.
You're right.
I mean, look how close that election was. And I think, and it was a good decision on his part. For the good of the country, he did not contest that. As I said, Al Gore went right away after it finally was decided and said, we are all in this together. The rule of law, the Supreme Court has spoken. Even way, way back when Jefferson beat Adams, and it was the first time the Republicans had won because the Federalists had been in power. It was the first peaceful transfer of power. And he comes right out and says, we're all Republicans, we're all Federalists. So it's going to depend on whoever the loser is. A lot is weighing tonight on the dignity and the willingness, I think, of that loser to look at the election and know what his responsibilities or her responsibilities are to the country.
Some of them are so close, right? I mean, if you just go by polls going into this, Florida separated by a point, Pennsylvania by 2 points, Michigan 3 points. Within the margin of error, so anything can happen. But regardless of whether one accepts the other, I'm just worried about how the nation then moves forward. We've had 16 years of this acrimony, very little getting done. I talked to Emmanuel Cleaver, of course, as a minister by training and tries to work with both sides. But he was just saying, Neil, it's very tough in this environment, right or left. So can you see anything approaching normalcy returning to Washington? And by the way, this is looking at Hillary now leaving Chappaqua for the Peninsula Hotel and what she hopes will be later on a victory speech tonight. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I understand how tough it is. I mean, I think the polarization is not just political, it's economic, it's social. It's been a long time coming now. It's not just been the last 8 years. When you think about it, you think about the Clinton impeachment, and you think about the problems that Bush Jr. had, and then the problems Obama's had in reaching across the aisle. Something's happened to the structure of our government and to our lack of faith in each other on the other side, looking at the other side as evil, not being willing to even talk to the other side. My only hope is that the American people, it's interesting, they're coming out in voting a lot today. People thought they'd be so dismissive of this election they wouldn't even want to vote. And maybe they're saying to both parties right now, you've gone down there to Washington to do our business. Just get to it. Stop what you're doing. There's such a sense of frustration with politicians. Politicians are losing their sense of an honorable vocation, being a political figure. So I still have a feeling that maybe both sides are going to realize something has to change. And maybe we've reached that point with this election because it's been so disheartening for so many people to see the course and dialogue that this election has brought to us.
You are an inherently good person, but you're naive. All right, I don't know. I'm kidding.
You know what? You may be right, but I think, you know what? You got to have optimism.
No,
you got to
you're
have
right
hope.
about that.
What's the
we've
point?
gotten through far worse, more divisive times. But I guess what I'm asking you is, I had Ken Langonia, the Home Depot co-founder. He's a Republican, likes Donald Trump. But when I asked him flippantly whether he would ever entertain running for office, he said, no way, no way. More or less saying what others say. It's a demeaning, very long process. Everything is out there. They vilify you on the left and right. Just not worth it. I wonder with young people, I know your own son ran for office and all, but does it really make young people, all people, very cynical and jaded to say, no, never?
No, I think that's a real problem. I mean, to the extent that politicians don't have that same sense of excitement about being a political figure, to the extent they have to spend so much time raising money, dialing for dollars, their private lives are going to be exposed in a way that they may not want to be. Perhaps our best people are not entering public life. And that's why I keep hoping that more and more people who've been in the military will go into public life, because they know what it's like to have a common mission, a common purpose, to put themselves in honor of their country. That's why I wish there could be some national service program so more young people could do something like that, and maybe that would bring those kind of people into public life. But right now, it's not one of those times when, being a politician, you keep saying, oh, I can't wait to be one of those guys in Washington.
Yeah,
that's a problem for us, but we have to change that.
All right. Doris, thank you. So many stunning bestsellers, The Bully Pulpit, Team of Rivals. She's written on every major U.S. president. And even the not-so-major ones. So history tells us we always get through this sort of stuff. Doris, thank you very much. There you go. I learned something from you, Doris. All right, again, following this motorcade of Hillary Clinton en route to New York, where she hopes some hours from now she'll deliver a victory speech. We'll see. All right, we've been telling you about these long lines in New York City. Rob Schmidt has seen them up close himself. They look incredible.
Yeah, well, you know, you said long lines, Neil. I think there's a long line. I think we found it. We couldn't find any others but this. We're on 56th Street here in Midtown, and you see behind me, this goes all the way down to the corner here and then makes it around the corner and goes up the block to 57th. If you come down this way to school, it's a public school and elementary school, is about another block down that way, where the actual polling location is where people are voting here tonight. This is open until 9 o'clock tonight, and just to give you an idea how long this line's been taking, we are going to ask Andrew here real quick just how long you've been waiting here in line.
Well, I've been here for about 25 minutes so far.
Been waiting about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
About how much longer do you think it'll go?
I'm hoping it's going to be very soon, maybe 5-10 minutes, I hope, but I'm excited to vote.
Is it worth it to wait?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing better in this country than voting.
I got you. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Andrew, thank you so much. And yeah, this is actually, Neil, this is where Donald Trump actually voted earlier this morning. He was met with some protests as he came in the door, but you know, he still did his thing and went on ahead to Trump Tower from there. And there was actually a topless protest here in the school gymnasium this morning as Donald Trump was set to arrive a couple hours from them. And 2 women arrested, anti-Trump protesters taking their top off in an elementary school gymnasium. It's election day. Welcome to New York.
Why did they?
We'll send it back to you.
Why did they take their top off?
Well, actually, you know, you can take your top off in New York City if you're outside, Neil. That's actually legal.
Okay.
If you're in a school gymnasium, you're not allowed to. I think they were just trying to make a point, get their names in the paper. They certainly did so. They also got arrested.
All right. Thank you very, very much. That's just part of the coverage. We will.